So once we've got our data into whatever format we want, like a structured database or a NoSQL database, and then we want to actually do some analytics or we want to do some machine learning, how can we do that in AWS?
Okay, so you have different services for machine learning in AWS. I will talk about the most popular one, maybe, which is SageMaker, and that's typically the AWS service to build machine learning models. And you have two ways of doing so inside SageMaker. The first way is with the SDK. I will explain what it is in a second. And the second way is with AutoML. So let's start with SDK. SDK stands for Software Development Kit, and it basically allows you to build a machine learning model classically on a Jupyter notebook, while at the same time being able to call for the AWS resources, such as EC2 if you want to get a compute instance, or storage, S3 if you want to, store your data sets in a storage service like S3, and then call, load the data set for your machine learning model. So you have your Jupyter notebook, you can call the SDK to get the AWS resources, while at the same time use the classic deep learning or machine learning libraries like TensorFlow, and you combine everything and you build and train your machine learning model. So that's the first way. Now the second way, which is amazing also, is with AutoML. And AutoML allows you to basically build your machine learning model, but not only that, build a whole pipeline of implementing a machine learning model without coding any line of code, without typing any line of code. It's basically with just some plug and play, just a few clicks that you manage to build this whole pipeline. So it goes through several steps. First, you input the data. So you first store your data in S3, and then you load the data in the first step of this AutoML pipeline. Then AutoML will automatically recognize what type of problem it is, like regression or classification. You just have to specify the target, and then automatically AutoML will recognize the features, the input variables. Then the next step, so you just have to answer a few questions, for example, on your data set, but generally AutoML will detect if there is any, for example, input variables to pre-process, like categorical variables. Then in the next step, that's where you're going to choose your training process. And you have three options. The first one is auto. So that's the option that will basically test an ensemble of models that AutoML usually detects as the best potential candidates for your data set. So, it identifies this fit between your data set and a good selection, potential good selection of models, and it will use these models to test them like in an ensemble. So that's the first option. Then the second option is basically train and test everything. So here you will just have in the pipeline, all the TensorFlow models. You will have all the gradient boosting models, deep learning models, neural network based models, and others. It will test all of them, and it will return at the end, the best combination of models with the best combination of hyperparameters that leads to the best score. So that's, of course, probably the option that will give you the highest score, the best score, but at the same time, it's the most compute intensive. And also it's the one that is going to take a lot of time. I actually waited a couple tens of minutes with this option. And the third option is just hyperparameter tuning focused. So it will not test all the models that are in SageMaker, but it will test, again, a good fit with your data set while doing a lot of hyperparameter tuning to make sure to find the best hyperparameters. And among these three options, the one that I recommend is auto, because it will generally be the one that leads to the best compromise between having the best score and not taking too much time. And at the end, without having implemented any line of code, you get your model, the whole code of the model. You get the training score, so accuracy for classification and mean squared error for regression. And then, yes, you get amazing results. I tested it several times, as I said before. You get the best scores with SageMaker. And then finally, you can deploy this model because, you get this model as an endpoint. So you can use this model to then deploy it to make some new predictions. And so you can get this model, make new predictions on new observations. So, and that's really amazing because that's really also a way to democratize machine learning and data science, because now people without having coding skills can train some machine learning models super easily They just need to understand how to pre-process, the data, how data should be pre-processed, how the machine learning pipeline works, and then they are ready to do machine learning. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I have two questions for you. One is probably a short one, and then one is maybe a longer one. So the first one, the short one, is you mentioned the idea of being able to transform your model into an endpoint. What's an endpoint?
So basically, in SageMaker, you have in AWS in general, you have endpoints, which is the link basically to your model, or or to your instance, or to your anything. Any feature of AWS has an endpoint which you can access, which allows you to connect this to other resources. And here, this is for makes us to make some predictions. So you have your models, which you can access through the endpoint, and then you can deploy it to make some predictions.
Nice. Yeah. I think like maybe the kind of general idea there is it's like an API endpoint.
Yes.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like this idea of microservices architecture where if you have all these discrete services
Yeah.
programmed in their own way, and then you have this endpoint for accessing whatever that service is. So it could be a model, it could be a data resource,
Exactly.
it could be any part of some production application. And so yeah, very easy to work with, and it's like the standard way of building applications today.
That's right.
Um, and then the other question that I have for you, it's funny, I thought that was going to be the short one. But maybe this one will end up being the short one. I don't know. I think that this is kind of a more open-ended question. So you described how with SageMaker there, we can do all of these incredible things. It can select our features for us automatically from all the data. It can pre-process those features. It can select from myriad different models and tune the hyperparameters on all of those different models and then ensemble them together into a super amazing model and then provide us with all of the summary statistics and allow us to quickly create an endpoint on this super amazing model. So why isn't everyone doing that all the time? Are there situations where we're better off having more control, or why does anybody learn how to make ensembles themselves or tune hyperparameters themselves if they can be doing it in SageMaker?
Yes, that's a very good question. I would say that it's because people probably think it's quite complex to use SageMaker and AWS. Maybe
Right.
there hasn't been that much training to democratize this. But indeed, as I said before, now I practically only use SageMaker because that's with SageMaker that I get these best models. And even by going with the easy option of selecting AutoML and just putting the whole pack of models in an ensemble and doing some hyperparameter tuning and get this. No, but seriously, I would say that the the way to not use SageMaker is if you want to have indeed more control, and that's maybe in a research context. Within a research context, here maybe you have to explore more avenues on how you want to combine your models with the data to come to your objectives. But if you want to do a classic data science project with some classic machine learning predictions, yes, I would definitely recommend to go for SageMaker and AutoML. I mean, I don't think that more control is necessary to get to your amazing score that you need to get.
Cool. Great answer. Other than SageMaker, Atlan,
Yes.
any other ML tools that we should know about in AWS?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of ML tools. So you have okay. So I'll tell you about one of my favorite, which is Deep Racer, because I have a particular preference for reinforcement learning. So yeah, you have AWS Deep Racer to test your reinforcement learning models for car racing. So that's pretty cool. You have also
Deep
Amazon
Racer?
yeah, Deep Racer. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. You have augmented AI, which allows you to implement a human review of machine learning predictions. You have Amazon Forecast to make some forecast, for example, on time series predictions. You have Amazon Translate to do machine translation. You have Amazon Comprehend to do NLP. You have Amazon Recognition to do object detection and object recognition. So you see, you have many of them. You have basically an AWS service for every branch of machine learning, whether it is computer vision, NLP, machine translation, So yeah, you have Amazon Transcribe for speech recognition, and you have Amazon Poly also. Which turns text into speech. Yes.